Flat Stanley by Jeff Brown. Original pictures from the book. Text shortened by Claire the Witch. The big bulletin board. "Breakfast is ready. Arthur, Stanley, wake up," called Mrs. Lambchop. "Hey, come and look," shouted Arthur. Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop went to the boys' bedroom and Arthur pointed to Stanley's bed. Mr. Lambchop had given the boys an enormous bulletin board for Christmas so that they could pin up pictures, messages, and maps. The big bulletin board was now on Stanley's bed. It had fallen during the night on top of Stanley. But Stanley was not hurt. "What's going on here?" he called out cheerfully. Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop lifted the bulletin board from the bed. "Heavens!" said Mrs. Lambchop. "Gosh!" said Arthur. "Stanley's flat." "Flat as a pancake," said Mr. Lambchop. One day, Stanley got a letter from his friend Thomas Jeffrey, who lived in California. Stanley was invited to go to California for the holidays. "Oh boy," Stanley said, "I would love to go." Mr. Lambchop sighed. "A train or a plane ticket to California is very expensive." When Mr. Lambchop came home from his office that evening, he brought with him an enormous envelope. "Now then, Stanley," he said, "try this for size." The envelope fit Stanley very well. The next day, Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop slid Stanley into his envelope with an egg salad and a toothbrush case full of milk. They put many stamps on the envelope and mailed him from the box on the corner. Mrs. Lambchop was nervous because Stanley had never been away from home alone before. "Can you hear me, dear?" she called. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Can I eat my sandwich now?" "Wait an hour," Mrs. Lambchop said. Then she and Mr. Lambchop cried out, "Goodbye, goodbye," and went home. Stanley had a fine time in California. When the visit was over, the Jeffreys returned him in a beautiful white envelope. Thomas Jeffrey had written "valuable" and "fragile," and this ended up on the envelope.
Once upon a time when I was asleep, a bulletin board came down on me. I thought it was a dream, but it's a fact that when I awoke I was flat. They call me Flat Stanley, I'm ready to go. From New York City down to Mexico, from Colorado to the Florida Keys, I'll float home on a California breeze. I'm as real as the paper in your hand. I've flown the ocean to Switzerland. I sailed around the Cape of Good Hope. Just put me in an envelope. They call me Flat Stanley, I'm ready to go. From New York City down to Mexico,